Part 1. The Door That Shouldn't Be There. Finn Calloway had a talent for noticing things that other people walked right past. He noticed, for instance, that the school janitor, Mr. Petrakis, always hummed the same 7 notes whenever he mopped the hallway near the gymnasium. Not a song Finn recognized, but the same 7 notes, always in the same order, like a secret code tapped out in sound. He noticed that the oak tree in the school's front yard had a hollow near its base shaped almost exactly like the state of Florida. He noticed that the lunch lady, Mrs. Bautista, always served an extra scoop of mashed potatoes to kids who looked tired, never to kids who asked for more. He was, in short, the kind of boy who paid attention. Which is exactly why, on a gray Tuesday morning in October, Finn noticed something that would change everything. It happened during the fire drill. The alarm had gone off at 9:47 in the morning, right in the middle of their reading period, and Mrs. Adiemi had done what she always did. She said, "Orderly, please, no rushing," and they had all filed out through the side door into the chilly autumn air. Finn was the last one out because he'd been at his desk searching for the bookmark he'd dropped, and when he finally jogged toward the door, he glanced back down the hallway. That's when he saw it. Between the door to the art room and the trophy case with the dusty basketball trophies from 1987, there was a gap. Not a large gap, maybe 2 feet wide, that Finn had always assumed was just a shadow, a trick of the bad hallway lighting. But now, in the particular slant of the gray October morning light coming through the high windows, he could see that it wasn't a shadow at all. It was a door. A small, narrow door, no taller than Finn himself, with a brass handle shaped like an open hand. The wood was dark and old-looking, nothing like the pale blue metal doors that led to the classrooms. It had hinges that were orange with rust, and carved into the center of the door at eye level a single symbol, an open book with a small star above its pages. Finn stared at it for exactly 3 seconds. Then the teacher aide, Mr. Chu, appeared at the end of the hallway and called out, "Finn, outside, now!" and Finn ran. But he kept the door in the back of his mind like a seed planted in dark soil, waiting. That afternoon, Finn sat across from his best friend, Priya Subramaniam, on the school bus home and told her what he'd seen. Priya was the kind of person who immediately made lists. She pulled a small notebook from her backpack. She kept 3 notebooks with her at all times, which Finn thought was both impressive and slightly excessive, and clicked her pen. "Okay," she said, "so either it's a supply closet that's always been there and you've simply never noticed it." "I've been at this school for 3 years," Finn said. "I notice everything." "Or," Priya continued, refusing to be interrupted, "it's new, which means someone installed a door in a school hallway without anyone noticing, which seems unlikely. Or," she paused and tapped her pen against her chin, "it's something else entirely." "Something else entirely," Finn agreed. "That's what I think." Priya wrote "something else entirely" in her notebook and underlined it twice. "We go back tomorrow morning, before school starts. We check." "Before school starts, it'll be locked," Finn said. Priya gave him a look. "Do you want to investigate or not?" "Obviously I want to investigate." "Then we go before school, and if it's locked, we figure out another time to go." She clicked her pen closed with great finality. "Investigation begins tomorrow." The next morning, they arrived at school 20 minutes early, telling their respective parents they wanted to work on a project. This was not entirely a lie. Finn reasoned it was at least a project of a kind. The hallway was empty and quiet, the overhead lights still on their dim morning setting, casting everything in a slightly yellowy glow. Their sneakers squeaked on the freshly mopped floor as they walked past the art room, past the trophy case with the 1987 basketball team, and there it was. "Oh," Priya said quietly. The door was exactly as Finn had described it. Small, dark wood, brass handle shaped like an open hand, the carved symbol of the book and the star above it. If anything, it looked even older in the morning light, like something from a different century. Priya took out her notebook automatically. She drew the symbol, the open book, the small star above it. "I've seen this somewhere," she murmured. "I'm not sure where." Finn reached out and touched the brass handle. It was warm, noticeably warm, despite the cool air of the hallway. He looked at Priya. She nodded. He turned the handle. The door swung open as smoothly and silently as if it had been oiled that morning, as if it had been waiting for exactly this. A smell came out to meet them. Old paper, dust, something faintly like cinnamon, and below it all, the particular sharp sweetness of a place where a great many things had been stored for a long time. It was the smell of somewhere old and full. Beyond the door, a narrow staircase led downwards, lit by small brass lamps that burned with a warm golden light. The carpets were deep green, worn down in the middle from what must have been thousands of footsteps. Finn and Priya looked at each other. "We're going to be late for school," Priya said. "Almost certainly," Finn agreed. They went in.
Part 2. The library itself. The stairs went down farther than seemed possible. Finn counted 17 steps before they curved, then another 11 after the curve, and then the staircase widened slightly and deposited them into a room that made Finn's breath stop entirely. It was a library. But not like any library Finn had ever seen, not like the school library upstairs with its cheerful bins of paperbacks and the beanbag chairs and the posters about reading, not like the public library in town with its long rows of shelves and its computer terminals and its section on local history with the glass case of arrowheads. This library was enormous, and it should not have fit below the school. It stretched away in every direction, shelves rising so high that their tops disappeared into soft shadows, the walls curving slightly as if they were inside a giant sphere. The shelves were made of dark wood, carved with vines and tiny creatures. Finn could see birds, foxes, what looked like a whale, a mouse standing on its hind legs. The carpet was the same deep green as the stairs, soft underfoot. The light came from dozens of floating lanterns, actually floating, drifting gently near the ceiling, each one the warm amber color of a fireplace. The books were everywhere, thousands of them, hundreds of thousands. They filled the shelves in every direction, so many that some had been stacked sideways on top of the standing ones, and others had been piled in careful towers near certain chairs and reading tables. The spines of the books were every color, cobalt blue and gold and deep red and ivory and black and green and silver and every shade between. "This," said Priya in a very small voice, "is not a supply closet." "No," Finn agreed. "This is bigger than our school. Much bigger." Priya already had her notebook open. She was writing furiously. They walked forward slowly, heads turning, trying to take it all in. The air was the perfect temperature, cool enough to be comfortable, and so still that the floating lanterns barely swayed. Somewhere deeper in the library, they could hear a faint ticking, like a clock, steady and slow. "Look at the books," said Priya. Finn looked. He'd been looking, but now he looked more carefully. The spines had titles, handwritten or stamped in gold, but the titles were like nothing from any library he'd been to. He read them as he walked. The Day the Harbor Came Back, 7 years of green summers, How Amara Learned to Speak to Rivers, The Last Good Winter, What Becomes of the Bones of Ships. He pulled one out, gently, carefully, and opened it to the first page. The paper was thick and cream-colored. At the top of the page, in neat dark ink, were the words, "This story has not happened yet. The following events may come to pass, or they may not. That depends, in part, on you." Finn's spine went cold. He turned to the next page. Chapter 1, it read. The morning Marcus Delgado found the photograph in his grandfather's attic, he had no idea that it would lead him to the mountains of the high country, where the old language was still spoken by the stones. Finn snapped the book shut. He stared at the spine. What becomes of the bones of ships? "Priya," he said. "I know," she said. She was holding a different book, a silver-spined one, and she turned it to show him the first page. It said the same thing. This story has not happened yet. They stood in the enormous silent library, looking at each other. "These are stories," Priya said slowly, "about things that haven't happened." "Future stories," Finn said. "Future stories," Priya repeated. She wrote this in her notebook. Someone wrote down futures and stored them here. The ticking clock somewhere in the depths of the library counted out the seconds of their silence. Then, from somewhere nearby, not scary, just sudden, a voice said, "You're the first visitors in quite some time."
Part 3. The Keeper.
They both spun around. Behind a large desk that Finn was certain had not been there a moment ago, though perhaps they simply hadn't noticed it in their amazement, sat a woman. She was old, or she seemed old, or perhaps she was something in between old and very old, in the way that certain trees seem ageless. She had white hair braided and pinned up carefully, brown skin mapped with wrinkles that gathered especially at the corners of her eyes and mouth, and she was wearing a cardigan the deep blue of ocean water in the afternoon. On the desk in front of her was a cup of tea, a brass lamp, and a book that was open to a page covered in notes. She was looking at them with great calm, and something else, something like relief. "I'm sorry," Finn said, because saying something seemed important. "We found the door." "Doors don't often get found by accident," the woman said. She had a voice like someone reading aloud from a very good book, unhurried, clear, with a warmth underneath it. "They get found by the people who are ready to find them. Please, sit down." There were 2 chairs in front of the desk that Finn also had not noticed before. He and Priya sat. "I'm Finn. This is Priya." "I know," the woman said. "How do you know?" She smiled. It was a good smile, the kind that went all the way to the eyes. "Because there's a book about you, Finn Calloway, and one about you, Priya Subramaniam, as there is for everyone." She gestured at the vast shelves stretching away in every direction. "One for every person who has ever been or ever will be." Priya's pen had gone still in her hand. "Every person?" "Everyone. Every human life that has been lived or that might be lived. Every possible story." She folded her hands on the desk. "I am the keeper of this library. My name is a very long and complicated thing, so most people who have found this place have simply called me Keeper. You may do the same." "What is this place?" Finn asked. "How does it fit under the school?" "It doesn't, really. The school is an entrance, not a container. The library exists in its own space, connected to your world by doors like the one you came through. There are other doors, in a lighthouse in Nova Scotia, in an old telephone booth in Seoul, in the hollow of a baobab tree in Malawi. Wherever there are people who notice things that other people walk past, there is a door nearby." Finn felt something warm unfold in his chest at this. People who notice things. "You said the books are stories that haven't happened yet," Priya said, leaning forward. "How is that possible? How can you write down the future?" "Because most futures are already written in the choices people are making right now," the keeper said. "Not all futures. There are a great many possible ones, and they branch and shift like rivers. But some futures are nearly certain. Some are hopeful. Some are sad. Some are extraordinary. We write them here and we keep them safe." She paused. "Or we try to." Something in the way she said, "or we try to," made Finn's attention sharpen. "Something's wrong," he said. It wasn't a question. The keeper looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, "Yes, something is very wrong, and I think, though I have not always been right about such things, that you too may be exactly who I need."
Part 4. The Teeth of Futures. The keeper poured them each a cup of tea, from a pot that Finn had not noticed on the desk until she was already pouring, which was beginning to seem like a characteristic of this place, and explained. For as long as the library had existed, the keeper said, there had been rules. The stories of futures could be read carefully by those who found the library. Reading them did not make the future unchangeable. If anything, knowing what might happen could help people make better choices. That was part of the library's purpose. Not to control what happened, but to illuminate possibilities. But the books could never be taken from the library. That was the most important rule. A story inside the library was a future that existed in potential, like a seed. If it was here, it could still be changed, still be shaped by the choices of the people it concerned. But if a book was removed from the library, that future didn't disappear. It froze. It became fixed and inevitable, impossible to alter, locked in place like a fossil in stone. So if someone took a book out of the library, Priya said slowly, working it through, whatever was written in that book would happen, no matter what. No matter what, the keeper confirmed. The people involved would lose their freedom to choose differently. Their future would be written for them. "That's terrible," Finn said. "Yes," said the keeper, "which is why it has always been forbidden, which is why in the long history of this library it has never been done." She paused. "Until now." She stood and led them deeper into the library. They followed her through canyons of bookshelves, past reading alcoves with worn leather chairs, past a gallery wall where tiny, hand-drawn portraits hung of people Finn didn't recognize, all of them looking thoughtful or happy or a little sad, all of them somehow looking like they were in the middle of something important.
She stopped in a section of the library where the shelves were noticeably emptier. Not empty like abandoned, more like a mouth with gaps where teeth had been pulled. The remaining books leaned against each other at odd angles, the spaces between them conspicuous and wrong. "Someone has been here," said the keeper, "more than once. I don't know who. I don't know how they found the library. The doors should only open for those who are ready." She shook her head. "But someone has been coming here and removing books. So far, 31 books have been taken." 31 futures frozen," Priya said quietly. 31 futures taken from the people they belong to," said the keeper. Her voice was even, but Finn could hear something underneath it that he recognized, the sound of someone trying very hard to stay calm. "I need to find out who is doing this and why. I need to get those books back, and I need help." Finn looked at the empty spaces on the shelves. He thought about 31 stories frozen like fossils, 31 sets of people who would no longer get to choose their own futures, who would wake up one morning and find that events were pulling them forward, whether they wanted to go or not, like a current they couldn't fight. "We'll help," he said. Priya was already writing in her notebook. "Tell us everything you know," she said.
Part 5. Clues in the Margins.
Over the next week, Finn and Priya visited the library every morning before school, and on 2 afternoons when they told their parents they were studying at the public library, which was more or less true, just not quite the library anyone else knew about. The keeper showed them the spaces where the books had been taken, and they examined each gap carefully. "Books in a library leave impressions," the keeper explained. "The dust remembers where they were. The neighboring books remember their weight. The shelves remember being touched." Priya developed a system, of course she did, where she drew the layout of each empty section in her notebook, noting which books remained and what their titles were. Maybe the thief was interested in a specific kind of story, she theorized. Maybe there was a pattern in which futures had been chosen. "The stolen books," Priya said on the 3rd morning, spreading her notes on one of the reading tables while the floating lanterns drifted slowly overhead. "Some are about people, some are about places, some are about events. But look," she turned her notebook so Finn could see her diagram, "every single one is in this section of the library." She was right. The keeper had shown them the library's organization. It wasn't arranged alphabetically or by subject, but geographically and temporally. Stories close in time and place were shelved close together, like a map in 3 dimensions. Every missing book was from a cluster of shelves that the keeper identified as stories of the next 10 to 20 years, from their own region of the world. "The thief isn't interested in ancient history or far futures," Finn said. "They want stories that are close, things that are about to happen." "Things that could affect them," Priya said. The keeper nodded. I had come to the same conclusion. Then the thief is probably someone from around here, Finn said. Someone who knows about this library, who wanted specific futures and who wanted them frozen. He thought about this. Why would someone want a future to be unchangeable? Why would you want to remove the choice? Priya tapped her pen against her chin. If you were sure the future in the book was a good one, a future where something wonderful happened, you'd want to lock it in, make sure it couldn't be changed by anyone else's choices. Or, Finn said, if the future in the book was bad for someone else, if you wanted to make sure something bad happened to someone else, and you were afraid they might find a way to avoid it. Silence in the library, except for the slow ticking from somewhere deep in the shelves. Both are terrible reasons, Priya said. Yes, Finn agreed, but one of them is a lot worse. It was Priya who found the first real clue. She found it not in the empty sections, but in a book that had been left behind, a book from a shelf immediately next to one of the gaps, tilted at a different angle than its neighbors, as if it had been removed and replaced carelessly. When Priya opened it, a small folded piece of paper fell out. It was a receipt from a stationery shop in town called Aldridge Fine Papers. The date on the receipt was 2 weeks ago, and it was for a set of 12 archival document boxes, the kind used for storing old books and papers. Someone brought boxes, Finn said, to carry the books in. And they dropped their receipt, Priya said. She was holding the receipt very carefully by its corner, looking at it like a scientist. There's a name on the credit card. It's smudged. I can see an R, then something, then maybe an O, then a few letters I can't make out. Finn looked. R, something, O. He thought. Is there anything else on the receipt? An address? Just the shop's address and the items, Priya frowned. But the shop is on Mill Street, 3 blocks from here. We could go there, Finn said. We could, Priya agreed, and she wrote "Go to Aldridge" in her notebook and circled it twice. Part 6. Aldridge Fine Papers. Aldridge Fine Papers was the kind of shop that itself seemed to belong to a slightly different era, like the library door, like the keeper. The window was filled with a display of beautiful notebooks and ink bottles and sheets of paper in every shade from stark white to the warm cream of old books. The sign above the door was painted in careful gold letters. A bell chimed when they pushed the door open. The shop was quiet and slightly dim, and smelled of paper and ink, smells that Finn by now associated with the library and felt comfortable in. The walls were lined with shelves of writing supplies, and in the back a man with a short gray beard and small round glasses looked up from a ledger. "Good afternoon," he said. He had the precise, careful voice of someone who chose their words deliberately. "Can I help you?" Finn had thought about what to say. He'd decided on something close to the truth.
"We found a receipt," he said, "from your shop. We think it might belong to someone we know. Could you tell us if you remember who made this purchase?" He held out the receipt. The man behind the counter, Mr. Aldridge himself, presumably, took the receipt and studied it over his glasses. "Ah, yes," he said. "The archival boxes, 12 of them, good quality. I do remember this one. A regular customer. Comes in every few months for supplies." He handed the receipt back. "I'm afraid I don't give out customer information." Finn nodded. He'd expected this. "Could you," Priya said from beside him, in the polite but extraordinarily confident voice she used when she wanted something important, "tell us anything at all? A physical description even? We're a little worried. The receipt was found in an unusual place." The man looked at them for a moment. He seemed to be weighing something. "I can tell you," he said finally, "that the person who bought these boxes is a librarian, or used to be. I recall they mentioned organizing a collection." He paused. "I can tell you they're very tall, and they always carry an unusual briefcase, black, with a clasp shaped like a lock. I believe they work somewhere nearby. That's all I'll say." Finn and Priya thanked him and went back out into the autumn afternoon. "A librarian," Priya said. "A former librarian," Finn said, "organizing a collection." "Who better to know about a library than a librarian?" Priya wrote in her notebook. Finn thought about this on the walk back. The town had 2 libraries that he knew of, the public library on Oak Street and the school library. But there was also a small historical archive in the town hall, he knew, and a library in the old community center that had been closed for years. "We need to know who used to work at those libraries," Finn said. Priya wrote this down. Research time.
Part 7. The Night Visit.
It was on a Saturday. After a week of careful research through old town newspapers Priya found online, after checking the local historical archive's website and the old community center's archive newsletter, that they got a name: Reginald Otto. He had been the head librarian at the community center library for 22 years, until the community center closed 7 years ago and the library was shuttered. The old newsletters described him as dedicated and knowledgeable, and sometimes difficult. He'd argued loudly and publicly against the community center's closure, writing letters to the town paper, attending council meetings, making, by all accounts, quite a scene. R.O., Priya said, tapping the name. Reginald Otto. That fits the smudged credit card. Finn found an address through the local property records, which were publicly available online. Reginald Otto lived and had lived for 30 years on a street called Hemlock Lane, on the edge of town. "We can't just go to his house," Priya said. "No," Finn agreed, "but we could observe." Priya looked at him. "You want to stake out his house?" I want to see if he has 12 archival boxes and a black briefcase with a lock-shaped clasp. A pause. I'll tell my mom I'm at your place. Tell your dad you're at mine. They rode their bikes to Hemlock Lane on Saturday afternoon, parking them behind a large hedge 2 houses down and settling in to wait, which Finn had always known was the largest part of any investigation. Priya brought sandwiches and kept notes. Finn kept watch. An hour and 15 minutes into their wait, the door of the house opened. A very tall man came out. He was thin and angular and moved carefully, as if every gesture was deliberate. He had silver hair cut close to his head, and he was wearing a long dark coat despite the mild afternoon. He carried in his left hand a black briefcase. Finn nudged Priya without speaking. She looked up from her notebook. The clasp on the briefcase was shaped like a lock. "That's him," Finn whispered. Reginald Otto stood on his porch for a moment, looking up and down the street with the careful attention of someone checking they were unobserved. Then he walked to his car, put the briefcase in the back seat, and drove away. "He's going somewhere with the briefcase," Priya said. "He might be going to the library," Finn said, "to take more books." Priya was already writing. "We have to tell the keeper, tonight." They went back to the school that evening as the street lights were coming on, through a gap in the school's fence that was technically not supposed to be used for entry. The side door they had discovered on their third visit could be opened from outside if you knew the precise place to push on the frame, which Finn had figured out entirely by accident on their second visit, because he noticed the slight give when he'd leaned against it to tie his shoe. The door between the trophy case and the art room was warm to the touch and swung open the moment he touched the handle. The keeper was awake. The keeper, Finn had begun to suspect, was always awake. He told her everything: the receipt, Aldrich fine papers, Mr. Aldrich's description, Reginald Otto, the briefcase. The keeper listened without interrupting. When Finn finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Reginald Otto," she said at last, very softly. "I know the name. He found this library approximately 11 years ago. He was," she searched for the word, "a devoted visitor for a long time. He read a great many books. He was careful with them." She closed her eyes briefly. "Then he discovered the book about the community center." "What was in it?" Priya asked. "A future in which the community center and its library was saved. The council voted differently. The funds came through, and everything he loved about that place continued. He read that book many times." The keeper opened her eyes. "And then the community center was closed, and that future didn't happen. He came back here afterwards. He was angry. He argued that if I could show people what futures were possible, I had a responsibility to do something about it, to intervene, to make certain futures happen." "And you said no?" Finn said. "I said it wasn't for me to decide which futures were made permanent. that the library existed to illuminate possibilities, not to take choice away from people. She looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. He left angry. I didn't see him again. Until now, Priya said. Until now. She looked at them. He's been taking books to protect certain futures and to trap others, to force outcomes he wants. He's been taking the choice away from everyone whose story he's removed. Finn thought of something. What was the future in the community center book? The one that didn't happen? What if it could still happen? What if there's still a path to it? The keeper looked at him for a long, still moment. "That's a very good question," she said, "and it tells me you understand something that Reginald does not." She tilted her head. "The future in that book didn't happen in the way it was written. But futures are rivers, Finn. They change course. They find new channels. A future that seems lost sometimes arrives by a different road." Finn sat with this. A future that seems lost sometimes arrives by a different road. "So what do we do?" Priya said. "We get the books back," Finn said. He looked at the keeper. "Can we talk to him?" Part 8. The Conversation. They found Reginald Otto the following Monday. Priya had suggested they approach carefully, not accusingly, she said, because accusing someone rarely changed their mind, and what they needed was for him to change his mind. They needed to talk to him as if they understood why he'd done what he'd done, even though it was wrong, because they did understand. People didn't usually do bad things because they were bad. Usually they did bad things because something had broken their heart. Finn had nodded. This was why Priya had 3 notebooks. They went to the old community center on Monroe Street after school. They'd thought the library was gone, but maybe he still came back to the building. And sure enough, after 30 minutes of waiting on a bench across the street, Reginald Otto walked up Monroe Street, long coat, careful gait, black briefcase. He stopped when he saw them. He had sharp blue eyes set deep in a lined face, and those eyes moved from Finn to Priya to Finn again, assessing. "You're children," he said. "We're the ones who found the library," Finn said. Something shifted in his face, quickly, then controlled again. "I don't know what you mean." "You do," Priya said, not unkindly. "We know about the receipt. We know your name, and we've been talking to the keeper." He said nothing. "You loved this library," Finn said, nodding at the old community center, its windows dusty and dark. "The real one, the one that was here." A long silence, then quietly, 22 years. "And you found the other library, and you saw a future where it was saved, and it's still closed anyway?" Reginald Otto looked at him for a long time. His jaw tightened. "Yes." "That's awful," Finn said, and he meant it. "That's a genuinely awful thing, to see a beautiful future and then watch something take it away." "And the keeper did nothing,"
Reginald said. The old anger was in his voice now, though tamped down with something that might have been exhaustion. She has all those stories, all those possible futures, and she simply keeps them in a room. She never uses them. She never helps anyone. So you decided to help yourself, Priya said. I decided, he said, precise and slow, to ensure that certain futures happened and that certain others did not. Yes. He looked at them both. I took books containing futures that would harm people I know, futures I didn't want to become fixed, and I took books containing futures I wanted to protect. But that's not how it works, Finn said. Taking the books doesn't protect those futures, it freezes them. The people in those stories lose their ability to choose. You're not protecting anyone. You're taking away their choices. You're writing their lives for them. Reginald Otto was quiet. And the books you took to prevent bad futures, those are frozen now too. The bad things in them are locked in. They'll happen now for sure. Priya said it gently, but directly. You've made things worse. Reginald stood very still. The evening light came down gray and cool around them, and in the old building across the street, a pigeon moved in a high window. I only wanted... Then he stopped. He started again. I only wanted to make sure good things happened. We know, we really do, but those 31 books belong to 31 stories. They're not ours to lock up. They belong to the people in them. A very long silence. Then Reginald Otto opened the black briefcase. Inside, carefully nested in tissue paper, were 12 books. Finn recognized the thick, cream-colored pages visible at the edges of several covers. I still have these, Reginald said. The others I returned to the room I keep them in, at home. His voice was quiet and contained now, the anger gone, or maybe just turned inward. I was going to take more today. He closed the briefcase. I haven't been sleeping well. Will you bring them back? Priya asked. Reginald looked at the old community center for a long time. Tell me one thing. The book about this place, the future where it was saved, is that future really dawn? Finn thought of what the keeper had said. Futures are rivers. They change course. They find new channels. A future that seems lost sometimes arrives by a different road. No, Finn said. The keeper says futures that seem lost sometimes come back a different way. The book didn't happen, but that doesn't mean the outcome is impossible. It just means it'll take a different path to get there. Reginald Otto stood very still. His jaw tightened. All right, he said at last. I'll bring the books back.
Part 9. The Return. Reginald Otto met them at the library door the following afternoon, the black briefcase in one hand and 2 careful cloth bags in the other, containing the rest of the books. He walked down the green carpeted stairs with the careful deliberateness of a person who had been away from a place for a long time and wasn't sure of their welcome. The keeper was at her desk. She looked at Reginald for a long moment.
He looked at her. "Hello, Reginald," the keeper said. "Hello," he said. His voice was rough. "I've come to put them back." It took most of the afternoon. The keeper, Reginald, Finn, and Priya worked through the library methodically, replacing each book in its proper place, consulting the keeper's careful records of where each one belonged. As each book slid back into its gap on the shelf, Finn felt something, some subtle pressure in the air, like barometric pressure shifting before rain. Release. 31 futures unfrozen. 31 sets of lives restored to possibility. When the last book was placed back, Reginald stood looking at the now complete shelves for a long time. "What happens now?" he asked the keeper. "That depends on you," she said, "as most things do." He turned to look at her. "I made things worse. You tried to do something good the wrong way," the keeper said. "That's not the same as being a bad person. It's being a wrong one, which is something everyone is from time to time." She tilted her head. "The library needs a caretaker, Reginald. I've been here a very long time, and I don't have the energy I once did. I need someone to help organize, to keep records, to watch over things." She paused. "I need a librarian." Reginald Otto stared at her. "You know this library better than most," the keeper said. "You love books. You understand what they mean." She looked at him carefully. "The question is whether you can love them without trying to own them." A long, long silence. "I think I can. I'd like to try."
Part 10. What Came After. Life went on after that, the way life does. School and homework and weekend trips to the grocery store and all the ordinary furniture of regular days. But Finn and Priya visited the library often, sometimes just for the pleasure of it, sitting in the worn leather chairs and reading in the warm floating lantern light. Reginald Otto became the library's caretaker, arriving every morning with careful punctuality, keeping the records, reshelving returned books, watching over things. He was not always easy to talk to, and he did not smile often, but when he did, Finn thought, it was like the light from the lanterns, warm and amber and real. He never removed another book. Sometimes Finn would find him standing in front of a particular shelf, reading the spine of a book with great concentration. Once, Finn saw him reach out and touch a spine with one careful finger, then lower his hand and walk away without taking it. That, Finn thought, was what it looked like to choose not to do the wrong thing. Not dramatic, not easy, just a hand reaching out and then moving away. One afternoon in late November, when the light came gold and slanted through the high school windows, Priya found Finn at his locker and presented him with a notebook. It was new, pale blue cover, uncracked spine, 300 blank pages. "What's this for?" he asked. "The library needs someone to record the stories of people who visit," she said. Not the future stories, those are taken care of. The other kind. The stories of how people found the library, and what they found there, and what they did with it. She gave him a look. You notice things. You should write them down. Finn turned the blank notebook over in his hands. He thought about the first Tuesday in October, the fire drill, the slant of gray morning light, the door he'd seen that everyone else had walked past. He thought about how it was the act of paying attention, of stopping, looking, really seeing, that had led him here. How the library had not revealed itself to everyone in that hallway, only to the one person who was ready to see it. He thought about 31 futures and what it felt like to give them back. He thought about the Peeper's words. Futures are rivers. They change course. They find new channels. A future that seems lost sometimes arrives by a different road. He opened the notebook to the first page. He wrote the date at the top. Then he wrote, "The first thing to know about this library is that it doesn't choose who finds it. The people find it themselves by paying attention." Priya read over his shoulder. "Better," she said. "Much better," Finn agreed, and he kept writing. 3 blocks away on Monroe Street, the old community center sat quiet in the November afternoon. Its windows were still dusty, its door still locked. But a new sign had been put up on the fence that surrounded it, a small official-looking sign that Finn had noticed on his way to school that morning and had stopped to read carefully, because that was what he did. The sign said, "Coming soon, Community Center Renovation Project, funded by the Hadley Community Trust." It was not the future that had been written in the book. It was a different road, just like the keeper had said, but it was going in the same direction. Finn had read the sign and smiled and kept walking, carrying his pale blue notebook under his arm, already thinking about what he would write in it next.
Epilogue. 1 year later. The community center opened on a Thursday in October, just over a year after Finn had first seen the door between the trophy case and the art room. It was smaller than before, but it was real, and it was warm, and it smelled of new wood and fresh paint, and in the back room the particular lovely smell of books being uncrated and placed on new shelves for the first time. Finn and Priya were there, standing in the back corner with cups of cider from the refreshment table, watching the room fill with people. There were families and old residents and school children and town officials with lanyards around their necks. There was Mrs. Bautista from the school cafeteria, who had come early and helped arrange the chairs. There was Mr. Petrakis, who Finn spotted near the door, unconsciously humming his 7-note sequence to himself. There, near the new bookshelves, stood Reginald Otto. He was in the same long dark coat, same precise careful posture, but something about him was different. He was talking to a young woman who seemed to be asking him about the collection, and he was pointing to the shelves with the focused attention of a person who loves the thing they're talking about. As Finn watched, Reginald said something, and the woman laughed, and Reginald smiled. That rare, amber, real smile. Finn wrote it down in his pale blue notebook. "What are you writing?" Priya asked. "Just something I noticed," Finn said. "You always notice the right things," she said, which was the nicest thing she had ever said to him, though she immediately ruined it by adding, "for the most part." Finn laughed and wrote that down too. Outside, the October sky went gold and then rose pink over the rooftops, and inside the new community center library, the books waited on their shelves, patient as rivers, full of all the stories that were still to come.